Welcome to Nelson Today. Our theme for this program is Heritage. A little later, we'll take you on the Nelson Heritage Walking Tour, then talk to Chris Laurie about his Auto Tour project. But first, some other items of interest. The annual Shaw Cable Training Course begins Wednesday, October 4th and runs every evening for 8 or 9 weeks. The training course is designed to introduce you to all aspects of television production. There is no charge for the course, but you are expected to contribute 4 hours per week for a year as a volunteer. To find out more about the course, also community television and your input into it, join the co-hosts of Nelson Today for a live phone-in on Wednesday, September 27th. Called This Is Your Community Television, the program is designed to get your input about programming as well as your questions. Beside me is a Shaw cable teddy bear that we think is cute. It sells for $9.95, with the proceeds going to charity. The bear is available from our offices on Ward Street. It's best to phone us at 354-4200 first to set up a time. Now on to our heritage theme. Many residents of Nelson have never taken the walking heritage tour of the downtown. Gary Ramsbottom took his camera with him on the tour recently. Here is the result. Nelson's courthouse was designed by F.M. Rattenbury, the architect who is famous for BC's Parliament buildings and the Empress Hotel in Victoria. This building was completed at a cost of $109,145.88 in 1909, not 1908, as indicated on the date stone. This is a fine example of late Victorian architecture with its high-pitched roof, towers and conical caps, gables and paired windows. On the corner opposite the courthouse is Nelson City Hall, built in 1902. The architects made use of Spokane pink brick and Caslow marble to provide an interesting and picturesque mixture of textures and patterns. Originally a post office and customs house, Nelsonites, and particularly the local architects, were furious that the contracts for this chateau-style building were awarded to firms in eastern Canada. The memorial to John Truth Houston, Nelson's first mayor, was erected in 1926. Houston founded Nelson's first newspaper, The Miner, in 1890. 2 years later, he sold The Miner and started Nelson's second newspaper, The Tribune. The Land Registry Office was built of fire-retardant brick in 1899-1900. It was commissioned by J. Fred Hume, a Nelson hotelier who was a member of the legislature and Minister of Mines at the time. The notable feature of this high Victorian building is the heavy metal shutters on all the first-story windows, which can be drawn from their protective casings inside the exterior walls. There is also a metal fire door in the main entryway. The building now houses the BC Ministry of Mines. Continue west along Vernon Street to the Jam Factory building. This building was constructed in two parts. The first, a two-story frame structure, was built in 1911 as a jam factory, and the second, a stone warehouse, was added in 1920. The uncoursed granite walls, which are 2 feet thick, serve as a retaining wall for the street. The owner, James Albert McDonald, dictated that his jam should be absolutely pure and free of false coloring, glucose, and other cheap substitutes. The Jam Factory received the first Heritage Building of the Year award in 1980. At the time of its construction, 1899-1900, the Bank of Montreal building was considered one of the finest commercial buildings in the interior of British Columbia. Designed by F.M. Rattenbury, this high Victorian building with Italian influences creates the atmosphere of stability, security, and permanence. Observe the high parapet cornice, the rounded arches above the windows, the intricate brickwork, and the terracotta inlays with the bank insignia. The use of steel beams instead of wood joists made this building an engineering innovation. Sandwiched between the Bank of Montreal and the Daily News, the Hamilton Powder Company, a small one-story building of 1895, is an exceptionally well-designed and preserved single-story Queen Anne commercial building. Typical of office block architecture, the Nelson Daily News building was constructed in 1899-1900 for the London and British Columbia Goldfields Company. In 1905, it was sold to the Nelson Daily News, which is the longest published newspaper in Nelson. Stylistically, this is a late Victorian building with its high parapet wall above the natural roof line and pilasters on the sides of the windows which merge into curved lines above the windows. Very little is known about this wooden structure built around 1895, except that it operated continuously as a grocery store until 1972. This building is a typical example of boomtown architecture with its bracketed cornice, which projects an illusion of grandeur. And built in 1899 for William Gopel, acting government agent and inspector of provincial government offices, this building was soon used as a hardware, clothing, and mining supply store. It is one of the few remaining wooden frame buildings on Baker Street. Built in 1914, this late Victorian building is a fine example of local masonry. This building was constructed in 1897. Constructed of granite in 1912, this building, the McCulloch Block, is an example of late Victorian Edwardian style of architecture. Built in 1897 as the first Royal Bank of Canada branch in the province, the Mara Barnard Block is a high Victorian style building and is one of the most elaborate in Nelson. The second-story bay windows are the only ones remaining in the city's commercial district. This Queen Anne commercial building, constructed with locally fired brick, dates back to 1904. Historical accounts suggest that this building was originally a furniture store. The owners also ran an undertaking business, and it is rumored that coffins were constructed on the premises. Once occupied by Eli Sutcliffe's barber shop, the right side of this later became a cigar emporium. Built in 1907 of Kootenay marble, this building, the Bank of Commerce, reflects the influence of the Beaux Arts classical style with its 4 Ionic pilasters and window lintels on the street level. This branch was one of the first that the Bank of Commerce built in the West. The Lawrence Hardware Building was the first 3-story building on Baker Street. It was planned that all 3 stories would be used by the hardware company. Built in 1897, this highly decorative building was one of the more elaborate buildings on Main Street. Italianate in style, this structure has boldly arched windows and a prominent overhanging cornice. Note the intricate brickwork and a high parapet rising above the roof line. Kirkpatrick, Wilson, and Clemens, 3 adventuresome merchants, paid $10,500 for the building lots. Planned and built in the 1 year, the KWC Block was built 1901, the largest mercantile building in Nelson. The street section became one of the city's finest grocery stores, offering delicacies from all over the world. The turret was a typical feature of many corner buildings along Baker Street. Unfortunately, this is the only remaining example of this Romanesque style. Rounded arches over the windows on the second story, the decorative brickwork and the pilasters tie the structural elements of this building together. F.M. Rattenbury helped design this building, which was built in 1899 for millionaire cattle king Patrick Burns. The Burns Block was designed as the Kootenai headquarters of the P. Burns Company and housed one of the most complete butcher shops in Canada. First known as the Beer Block, the Aberdeen Block was constructed in 1898 by mine manager and hardware store owner George F. Beer, who later became a Nelson alderman. In 1899, John Houston commissioned architect A.E. Hodgins to design and construct this fine example of Victorian grandeur. Originally a bank, this building still contains two large concrete walk-in vaults. Steel I-beams form the skeleton for this brick structure. Notice the double-arched entrance with its Lardo marble columns. The Houston Block received the Heritage Building of the Year Award for 1982. Alex Carey was the architect for this 1909 building, commissioned by the Fraternal Order of the Eagles. The Nelson Eyrie was the 22nd to be formed in North America and the 4th in Canada. Turn up Josephine Street, and in the second half of the block you will find an excellent example of a utilitarian building constructed of uncoarse granite in 1920, built as a service station about the same time as the automobile was becoming a popular mode of transportation. Complementary to the general square look of the building is the arched doorway in the center of the Josephine face. Just up from the city garage is a similar building in uncoarse granite. The oldest part of this building is furthest from Josephine Street. Built in 1897 as the city jail, it was the first stone building in Nelson. Next to the lockup is the 1902 addition, which served as a storeroom and office for the superintendent of electric light. Turn west along Victoria Street to the middle of the block and discover one of the best preserved apartment blocks in the interior of BC. Richardsonian in style, completed and named after Edwin Kerr in 1911, it was built out of granite quarried from its own construction site. At the time of its construction, this apartment block was considered to be luxurious and modern, with such conveniences as electric light, steam heat, and gas cooking stoves. The apartments vary in size from 2 to 7 rooms. Near the top of the west side of the building are charcoal marks made when the adjoining Opera House was destroyed by fire in April 1935. Other programs on our schedule include coverage of this year's Seiswagen Fun Triathlon, the Kokanee String Quartet at the Sub Pub playing George Gershwin's Lullaby, and the production Love is Strange from the Capitol Theatre. Following these, our standard closeout production City Council coverage. Next week, Nelson Today has an hour-long feature of various local theater groups. And that's this week's program. Thanks for being with us. For Shaw Cable and Nelson Today, I'm George Miller.